Okay, so it should tell me that we are going live. So there's always a little bit of a delay with Zoom. So, well, not just with Zoom, with Facebook Live as well. So okay, and we're live. So this is good. So I'm just going to open it up so that I can see comments. There's always a little bit of a delay with there's my delay. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
So now I'm just trying to get so how's the weather in North Bay?
I'm actually in town right now. I'm leaving to go to Vaughan tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you gone back home at all since
so I'm just gonna
since
open
I
it
talked
up
to last?
so I can see not much.
So I'm not sure.
There's always a little bit of a delay with
there's my delay. Can you hear it? Okay, yeah. Apparently we're listening to it twice now. There we go. Okay, so all set, ready with comments. So I want to welcome all of you to Monday Whispers Chat. And we've had a few less glitches than we have had over the last month. So really thankful and glad that that things are running a little more smoothly for Brittany. So Bridging the Gap Wellness is all about being able to create a holistic life and helping you find balance. And so each week during Monday Whispers Chat, we are featuring some amazing and inspiring women. And so my name is Rolia Lair, and my spirit name is Gigudo Migunkwe, and which that stands for Talking Feather Woman. And I am a holistic trauma coach, as well as a spirit flame keeper and a soul healer. And so I work with women who've experienced trauma in their lives, and we help them come up with different ways of dealing with things using all of my experience in psychotherapy and combine that with energy healing work. And so I use things like chakra work and crystal Reiki, theta healing, and Akashic record reading, and of course meditation and moon medicine teachings. And we use the medicine wheel for most of the time that I actually work with my clients. So so yeah, that is so that's what I do. And so if you're hopping on, then please feel free to let us know that you're here. And if you have any questions along the way, then please feel free to do that. And so I want to introduce the lovely Brittany Porter. And so normally Brittany lives in North Bay with her daughter, and I guess she still lives there, but right now she's actually in our neck of the woods. So she's actually up here in the New Liskeard area. So welcome, Brittany.
Hi.
So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from New Liskeard, originally born and raised. I just turned 27. I have a 6-year-old daughter. We moved to North Bay in like November. Yeah, I don't know. I do jiu-jitsu for fun.
You do what for fun?
Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Okay. So is that like a taekwondo kind of thing? Like, I don't know. I've never heard of it.
It's like a fighting on the ground type of thing.
Oh, wow.
Like UFC, I guess.
Nice. Not something that I'd want to practice, but but sounds interesting. So okay, so our topic today is about the stigma around suicide and life after suicide attempt. So one of the things that we've heard a lot of over the last, I'm going to say probably about 6-7 months, is that we've heard a lot of all of these celebrities that have committed suicide and all this stuff around mental health. And so now Robin Williams' anniversary is coming around. So people are talking about that again. And that is all great. And that is all fantastic. But we also live in the here and the now. And as much as it is great that we're actually talking about all these celebrities, but we also have people in our neck of the woods that are struggling with mental health and depression and anxiety and all of these kinds of things. And so Brittany's actually going to share her story. And so as we go along, Brittany's going to be able to talk about some of the things that she's experienced and what's come up for her. And because I think that it's a really important topic for us to be able to talk about mental health, but also talking about mental health, not just for celebrities, but for people in the real world. So Brittany, can you tell me a little bit about what's happened? So can you share a little bit about your story?
Yeah. I feel like my story goes really far back, but I'm going to choose to just stay within like the last year of my story, because I find that was when it's been the most of the story to tell, I guess you could say. Like February of last year, I started going downhill really fast. And so between February, March, April, and May, I was probably in and out of the hospital 3 times with attempts, and never anything too serious, I guess. I spent 1 week in the hospital, and then the other few times after that, it was, they didn't keep me, they just sent me home. And then on July 17th last year of 2017, I had a very serious attempt and was code blue in the ICU, and they didn't know if I was going to wake up or if I was going to function if I did wake up. And I did wake up, and I feel like I don't remember a lot, because I like had an overdose and I hit my head and I went through that, and so I have some memory issues. But I just remember waking up, and I didn't at the time get how serious like what had happened was. Like I woke up and I was just like mad at the world. And I just find that over the last year, it has been really difficult and taken a lot of work to come to where I am today. And it hasn't been easy. And I find that I dealt with a lot of mean people on the path. And even my best friend and I were talking about it the other day, about how some of the nurses just treated me kind of crappier than you would expect a nurse to treat her patient. And my best friend told me that she felt like it was because why I was there. She felt like because I tried to take my life, that they devalued the reason I was in the ICU, and that they weren't entirely attentive, and that they were rude to her, and that she felt that they were rude to me. And I don't remember any of this, but I do remember, like, when I spent a week in the psych ward after that, and it was the worst week of my entire life. And I can say that it was absolutely awful. They treated me like I was an animal. They treated me like they didn't even treat me like a human. And I've just never felt worse about myself in my life. Even leading up to my attempt, I feel like the week after that I was in the psych ward was even worse. And it was very difficult. And I had nobody to talk to. Nobody. And I just feel like the whole system surrounding mental health is very flawed. And the way people talk to you and the way people treat you. I was getting made fun of openly on Facebook for being a struggling single mom after my attempt. And, people were mad at me and giving me attitude because how could I do that to them? And as somebody who lost a best friend to their own hands, I understand that, but I just feel like when someone tries to take their life and they survive, everybody makes it about them and not about the person at hand who's struggling to live. It becomes all about everybody else and how they could do that to everybody else. But what about everything that they did to themselves? And I remember, a couple months after I got out of the hospital, finding out that I had damaged my liver from taking all the medication I took. And they didn't get to stitch up my arm for whatever reason. So I have very, very large scars on my arms, and I have some memory issues. And it took me months to learn how to respell and write very simple words and, basically learn how to human again. And it was devastating, and it was really difficult because it's not like I just woke up and got to go back to life. Like I had to wake up with no will to live and then completely rebuild myself and my life, along with being, dealing with everybody being upset with me. And then I think it's a lot. And people seem to only really have compassion and be hurt when the person is successful at taking their life. And I just feel that when a person isn't successful, they're ridiculed and told to try harder. And like, that's what I went through as well. I was told multiple times that I should try harder and I should do better. But then, me and my best friend talked about it. It was like, if I was successful, these same people who are treating me this way would probably try to show up at my funeral, and act like it wasn't, like how it was so sad. And I've noticed even with my own friends who have taken their lives, those people show up at their funerals, and it's just very difficult. And I don't think people understand. There's a lot of lack of compassion and love for people that struggle with mental health, and some people with mental health problems. And I felt this way last summer when I was going through all that. Like, I just needed to be loved and to be held and told that it was okay, and that, someone to talk to. And I felt I didn't have that. And I felt like everybody was just angry with me. And it was very difficult. And it's only been up until recently that I finally have been able to accept the things I did to myself. And like, also, as I talk, you can notice this part of my mouth doesn't move because it's paralyzed from, I fell on my face when I did that. And, like, having to come to terms with these things. And I think I've already said this because I'm kind of rambling on, but everyone was saying, like, how could you do this to us? But when I realized, just what I had done to myself, it was like, but how could I do this to myself?
So that must have been so one of the things that, because I've worked in mental health for a long time, and one of the things that I've heard from many clients who have attempted suicide and who have survived, and one of the things that I have heard from them is that they feel worse about themselves than they did before they even did before, because one of the comments that I've heard many times from different clients is, I can't even get this right. I can't even kill myself. I can't even get that right, because they already felt worthless before they attempted suicide, right? Yeah. So does that kind of ring true for some of the things that have happened for you?
Absolutely. It was like every time I would just tell myself I was weak because I was too afraid. I was too afraid. Every time I tried, it was just, I would get scared, and I wouldn't finish what I started, basically. And I would just get scared. And I felt like I was too afraid to live, and I was too afraid to die.
That's quite the conundrum, right? So like, you've got these like two complex, like not complex issues, but like from two different extremes. Like, right, I want to live, I want to do well, I want to be part of life. And then I've got the other part of, I just want to die. I just want it all to end. And so like at the beginning, one of the things that I had said is that we've heard so much about the suicides of all of these well-famous actors and well-famous people who've had these attempts who not attempts, who've actually committed suicide. And you've got all these people that are saying, oh, if we would have only known, and if we would have been able to do something to support them. But yet, one of the things that you've just shared is that people have said this when people have committed suicide, but yet when you've actually survived, no one stepped in to be able to help you. No one stepped in to be able to, and I shouldn't say no one, because I'm sure that you've had some support. So I'm exaggerating based on the things that you've already shared, but it's like, but that's how it feels, right? So like, no one cared enough to be able to step up and make me, and like you said, I just wanted to be hugged. I just wanted to be I just wanted to feel better. And instead I was ridiculed, and people shamed me, and I was already ashamed of myself in the first place. I was already feeling guilty. Plus I already felt like a complete failure because I couldn't even do this right.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone, not everyone, but most people, they just make you feel like you know, like you're crazy for doing this and you're selfish because what about all of us? And it's like, but why are none of you taking into account that I'm in this much pain? Like, it's not about anybody else. I think what a lot of people fail to realize when someone, and like, it's hard for me to say this because when my best friend took his life like 9 years ago, I was very upset and I didn't understand until last summer when I really understood. You know what I mean? And I just feel like so many people, they don't realize that like nobody in that position thinks that anybody's going to care. Nobody that makes it that low to the point where they try to take their life thinks like, oh no, like I'm going to break everybody's heart. No, they feel totally alone and like they're doing everybody a favor. At least I speak for myself when I say that at that point I felt like I was doing the entire world a favor. And my mom might be sad, but like she's going to be happy and relieved because nobody wants to deal with me anymore.
So has anybody come forward to tell you that those things are not true, Brittany?
So right after I got out of the ICU, I guess the doctors had told all my friends and family at that time not to give me too much emotional trauma because it would just further aggravate, I guess you would say, my brain injury, like my memory loss issues.
Okay.
So nobody really told me anything or like what was going on. Like I was very lost in life. I didn't know who I wasn't friends with. There's some people to this day, I don't remember them, even though apparently I've met them and I know them. Like I didn't recognize my own clothing, stuff like that. But so as time went on and the months went on, eventually as I'd hit one-on-ones with my friends, they would just have these random cry fests. And I'd be like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Because it'd be like 5 months later. And they'd be like, well, I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but my one best friend said, like, I watched you have a seizure and I thought I watched you die. And it really traumatized me. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And we talked about it. And so I've had those one-on-ones with everybody who have said, like, some of them understood how I got to where I was with everything that was going on in my life and other issues, but they all, eventually I had all my closest friends tell me that, they love me and they're here for me and they're glad that, they would have been lost without me and like so on and so forth and things like that. But again, I'm not trying, like, I'm just trying to speak my truth about the situation, is that a lot of people that I didn't speak to for like 10 years came out of nowhere too, that had heard about it, tell me how much they love me. And like that to me at the time just aggravated it further because, these are people that I haven't even spoken to in years. And then I felt like you're just trying to pretend you care to make me feel better. And so it wasn't. And then some people who were there when it happened aren't in my life now. Like, I just find people revolve, like friendships change, like life is always changing. But like my friends that have always been around since then and my family have been there for me through it to the best of their ability, because a lot of them just don't understand, but they try.
Well, and one of the things too that that I know that happens with many relationships over the years is that we change, right? So as we grow and we shift and we change. So when you started a year ago, then this is where you were at and this is what was going on for you. And then one of the things that happens as we shift, so you've grown, and that was one of the things that you and I had talked about initially when we had first talked about this, is that you have grown, right? So you have shared your story, you've shared your story publicly, you share your story publicly on Facebook, and when you're having a bad day, you put it out there, right? And so as you shift and as you grow, sometimes that's one of the things that happens with relationships. Plus, we also get older, we have children, we move on, we have other relationships, we move away. And so sometimes it's hard to be able to maintain those relationships, and it's hard to be able to maintain that contact. So part of that has to do with them growing as well as you growing. It doesn't make it easier, and it doesn't make you feel less lonely when somebody who you really care about is no longer in your life. But we have to try and figure out whether or not they are meant to be in our lives anymore, or if they're going to come back around and circle back through and that kind of thing. So what are some of the things that have been, so what's it been like for you since? since your suicide attempt. So in the last year, can you share a little bit about what has been different for you?
Well, the first six, like, I won't lie, the first 6 months, it took, like, I wasn't always grateful. For a while, I was mad. I was mad that I got saved. I was mad that now I have to deal with all of everything I had to deal with before and then some, right? Because it just made everything worse at the time to me. So probably for the first 6 or 7 months, it was like a very intense roller coaster of just learning and growing and changing, and days filled with gratitude and days filled with self-loathing and acceptance. And I learned so much about myself, more about myself in the last year than I have in my entire life. And so basically, like, the last 4 months this summer, we've been talking about anxiety and whatever together. I find I've changed and developed so much that sometimes I don't even recognize myself, because I've put in so much work to be where I am today and to be able to appreciate life for what it is, even on a bad day, which is still difficult. I still have my moments, but nothing like I did last summer. Before, I was so impulsive that sometimes I am surprised I even survived. But now I don't get that. I don't get that low. I have help and I have a very good support system, and I've been doing all the things that I need to do to make myself happy and feel whole within myself and with my daughter, and even my daughter's entire shift, because last summer, up leading to my attempt, I obviously wasn't very happy. So my daughter fed off of that. And so she misbehaved at school and she was always late, and which was my fault. But she's a totally different kid now, and we have a totally different life now. And now I understand the value of myself, and I have self-worth, and I have self-love, and, things that I allowed myself to go through in the last, let's say, 2 years. Today, the girl I am would never allow those things to happen or to be treated that way. So it's been a very, very big change.
Good. So what are some of the things that, what are some of the things that you happen when things are really bad? So I know that working with different clients and understanding the whole cycle of mental health. So one of the things that, so my question is, what do you do when you're actually having a bad day? What are you doing? What do you do when things feel like it's just not going to get any better? Because I'm sure that you still have some of those days, even though things are better. And especially in the last 4 months, you've done a lot of growing and you've done a lot of changing. But so what happens if you're having a bad day?
Absolutely. And it's kind of different. Okay, so I quit smoking yesterday. So it's now been like 2 days, because it's like 7:30 at night. And I'm not a very pleasant, like, I'm a little cranky, but I find that I'm noticing is that smoking was my go-to a lot of, like, oh no, like, I'm not okay, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, and I would smoke. And I just find that's who I was. And so now the last 2 days I'm learning different things. But I find when I'm having a bad day, unfortunately, I'm still working, because growth is a forever thing. I have very unhealthy coping mechanisms. I actually, again, just this week, I've been binge eating for probably 2 or so months now since I hurt my knee. And just this week, I've been able to stop that and have not binge ate in a week today, actually, which feels extremely good, because I was at a point where I did not think I was going to be able to gain control of my eating. It had gotten really bad. And so now that I've quit smoking too, I'm exploring other avenues. I started reading books that lift me up.
Good.
I started reading books that just fuel my mind with positive energy that makes me happy and feel good. And so when I'm having a bad day, I try to do self-care, and I will have a bath at night and read this book. Or I started taking my dog for walks when I'm angry. Deep breaths, meditation I've gotten into. Like, I'm trying to explore more healthy coping mechanisms, because no, they have not been entirely healthy the last 6 months. As I said, I was binge eating and smoking, but now that those are gone, I'm trying to get back into more healthy coping mechanisms when I'm having a bad day. And for some reason, I had put my own stigma on the suicide hotline, and I had never called them. And I thought, for whatever reason, I convinced myself I could never call them.
Yep.
And about 5 months ago, I did. I called them, and it was actually like I was laughing by the time I got off the phone with this girl. And like I just told her, like, I don't want to take my life. I'm just not okay, and I need to yell at somebody who's just clueless, right? And this girl was like, okay. And like she was like, so maybe you should go take a bath and read your book. I'm like, you're totally right, girl. See ya. And like I got off the phone, and I felt great. And so I really encourage, even if you don't fear for your life and you're having a really bad day, that hotline is very useful and helpful, and they're awesome.
And it's great. And it's great that you actually reach out, because that was one of the things that when I worked on the crisis line, when I did the suicide line, that was one of the things is like, how can we help you get through tonight? How can we help you get through right now? And because a lot of the calls would come through at night, not to say that they didn't come through the day, but most of the time for most people, they come through at night because that's when they feel at their worst. They're alone, it's dark, and a lot of times people who are struggling with mental health issues have also had traumatic events that have happened to them. And so sometimes it's flashbacks, sometimes it's ideas, sometimes it's a lot of different things. Anxiety is huge for people that are with mental health, right? So those are some of the things of being able to do that. So, and they're there to be able to help. They're there to be able to help you feel good and help you feel and finding those positives. And for sometimes when you're the person on the other end of the line, to try and help you find those things, to be able to help you find positives. But there's always the positives. There's always ways of being able to help you connect to who you are and what's important to you, because and that's through conversation, right? So that's through the conversation and through being able to help. And so out of all of the clients that I've ever worked with that have been suicidal, there's only been one client who it didn't matter what it is. And even when he would call, he would struggle still with being able to find anything positive. And even though we knew a lot of the positives because we had known him for a long time before he was actually successful, that was one of the things is that we would actually, and that sounds like so horrible. Like that is like the worst statement that anybody can ever make is a successful suicide attempt, but that's what it's called. And so, but it didn't matter what it is that we were doing to try and help him find those positive things. It was trying to be able to get him to see what was happening. But 90% of the people that I've worked with on the crisis line, or that my colleagues have worked with, there's always something positive. There's always something that we can try and help them bring them back to the present. And that's the part that's really difficult, is being able to, for the person often, is being able to be in this present moment, right? Being able to find those tangible gratitude things, those things to be grateful for. And so I know that for me, when I'm, so a lot of my posts, a lot of the quotes that I find, a lot of the things and a lot of the strategies that I give people is oftentimes finding gratitude, right? So finding gratitude, because if you can find gratitude, you can help get through what it is that's going on. And so as much as people are like, oh, well, that's just kind of dumb, it's that if you can find that gratitude, it just helps you to be able to kind of keep moving and moving forward. So I don't think Nikki's still online, but one of the things that Nikki commented is support is critical, and whole support, not support riddled with their problems. So that's actually a really good statement, right? So a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, I'm here to help you. Oh, she is still here. Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. So one of the things that oftentimes we actually have people that are, okay, oh yeah, well, I'm here for you, but you know, this and this and this and this and this is my problem. Well, that just doesn't help you, uplift you. That actually just makes you feel worse, right? So it's like, so my problem is so irrelevant that now we're talking about yours.
Yeah. And I find equal give and take, like if you are in a relationship like that, like I was just talking to someone today about how, you know, just because your job might be harder, so you think you had a longer day, doesn't mean I'm not entitled to still be tired and didn't have a long day.
Yeah.
You know, and I find what we were just saying before the question came up is that the reason that I am so open with my story and everything that happened is because when I look back, there was nothing nobody could say to me at that moment that I was going to believe. Like, if anyone told me it was okay at that moment or that they loved me, it didn't matter because I was so far down the hole. And I've been trying to continually learn from that moment on how from it and how to be able to help other people that are in that moment. And so that I find having people who relate and can understand, you know, is very helpful, because I've had quite a few people reach out to me and I just listen mostly and we talk. And I just think that trying to learn from it is really important for me so that other people don't maybe have to go there.
Well, and one of the things that that is sometimes helpful, and again, it depends on who that support, those supports are, is by being able to have like a support group. So being able to have a group of people that you can actually reach out to when things are bad. And again, not those people that are just going to drain you and suck you down and not help you feel any better, but somebody like having that support, having those people that can actually understand. And so, and those are things that are like extremely important for us to be able to do, because if we can actually support the people who are feeling suicidal, then it will actually give them that incentive to want to reach out and to be there and to be supportive and to want to accept that support. Because like you said, when you're feeling at your lowest, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's how I'm feeling. This is how I'm feeling at this very moment. And it doesn't matter because it's my own self-worth. And so being able to help lift up your self-worth is something that's really important. So what advice can you give to people who are trying to support their friends or family who are suicidal?
Honestly, don't ever not believe them, even if they say it 5 times a day, because my whole family had to deal with that. I said it a lot and I had feeble attempts a lot. And so when the day came where I finally almost didn't come back, everybody was mad at themselves because they never took it seriously. Some people say it all the time, but that doesn't mean they mean it any less just because they say it and they don't act on it.
Yeah.
And so I just recommend that if you have someone in your life who talks about, you know, suicide often or says they're going to end their life, don't ever not take that seriously. And some people will turn it into humor. I joked about it a lot, even after my attempt. It was a funny thing because that's how I dealt with it. Yeah. And just love them wholeheartedly and not with conditions, you know, not with, well, if you get better and well, you need to and I can't. I understand now, being on the other side, and now I have a friend who's going through what I went through last summer, that it is very exhausting and it can be difficult, but just try not to give up on your family and friends, your loved ones especially, and try to help guide them in the right direction. You know, therapy, counseling, there's a lot of books out there, and just being an ear to listen to, the suicide hotline, like there's so many outlets that people can go to, and sometimes they just can't do it on their own.
Yep. And so Nikki actually says, so that's a big one. Don't ever not believe them, because you never know when it's the one time they say it and they mean it. So so Nikki can actually relate and understand what it is that you're saying. And so, because that is right. So, and then, so you've got the person who is suicidal, but then on the other hand, you've also got the family member. Like you said, your family was feeling guilty. It was like, well, maybe I should have listened. I should have heard what it is that she was saying, but I was so tired of hearing her all the time. And I didn't think that it was actually going to happen. And so those are things that are extremely, extremely important. And so one of the things that I'm going to do is in the comment section is I'm actually going to put the Canadian and the US suicide hotline numbers, so that way there people can actually have access to it. So if you're actually watching this on the replay and this is something that is important for you, like important for you to be able to hear, or for someone else that you know, is that I'm going to make sure that those numbers are available to you. I'm not sure whether or not Canada has a link specific to being able to do the suicide hotline online, but I know that the States does. So they actually have a link so that you can actually chat especially with a lot of younger people, like chatting it seems to be better for them than the conversations. And so I know for sure that the States has it, and only because I had somebody who had actually reached out to me from the States. And so I actually had to go and find that information because I didn't have that contact information. So because we are online, I'm actually going to post the both the Canadian and the US links, so that way there people actually have access to them, so that they can actually you can actually have them at your fingertips, kind of thing. So is there anything else, Brittany, that you think that is important for people to know or to hear that we haven't touched on?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of important things around it, but just compassion. If you know someone that has had an attempt and they talk about it, you know, I understand that everyone's had different experiences in their life and can feel a different way. And, you know, you just don't understand until you've been there, because I didn't even understand until I was there. And it is I don't wish being in a place of wanting to take your own life on anybody, not anybody.
Yeah.
Because it's truly an emptiness that I can't describe to anyone. And I don't wish it on anyone. And I feel like people just need to try to be a little bit more compassionate to one another and spread a little more love. And if you know somebody who's attempted, you don't try not to shame people. And if people tell you they have mental health problems, you know, it's just not a joke. And
no.
I think that in this day and age, a lot of people do take it as a joke until someone actually, you know, does die, and then they all cry. And it's just dead people get more flowers than the living, because regret is stronger than gratitude. I saw that quote somewhere the other day.
Oh, that's
and I feel,
well, it's a horrible quote, but it's a nice quote. Like it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Like, people need to be more grateful. Like, you were right when you said the gratitude thing, and I learned that over the last year. If you write 5 things every day that you're grateful for, it'll change your whole life, even if you do nothing else. And I learned that last summer too.
Yeah, and that is something that, like, as much as I did that with my clients, and that was something that I had always made sure, is that when I was suffering from depression, I was struggling, and I struggled for 9 months. And so one of the things is that having to make that gratitude statement, and having to make that one thing, just being able to come up with one thing every day, that was the most difficult thing for me to be able to do, because I could barely get my feet on the floor. And so all I wanted to do was just sleep. I just didn't want to wake up, and it was just horrible. It was just, I just didn't want to be able to, I wasn't thriving. And so being able to find one thing to be able to be grateful for, and that's one of the things that I started doing, was that I started putting it out there. And because I've worked in mental health, I knew that I needed to be able to get help, and I had actually reached out for help. And that was one of the things, is that it was all that I could do to drag my butt to get to the appointment. It was all that I can do to just be able to get out there. And so one of the things that I had done was, in creating my action plan, was being able to come up with one thing. And so because I was struggling with it, is that to be able to hold myself accountable, is that I started doing my gratitude statements on my Facebook page. And so every day I was writing, so day 1, and I would actually write one thing that I was grateful for. And I did that, and I had committed to myself to do that for 30 days, because it was something, and I needed to wait for my medication to kick in, and it needed to be adjusted. And there's like so many other things, and there's so many other factors that come with when somebody's feeling that low. And so that's one of the things that's really important, is that try not to be doing this on your own, and reach out to your doctor, be able to get, because there's not just one kind of medication, there's a lot of different kinds of medication. And sometimes people need medication, sometimes they don't, but it's like really important to be able to not dismiss it. So one of the things that, and a lot of people will get, oh, well, like, that's my happy pill, or like making all these kind of comments. And it's like, that's not helpful. Like, that's not helpful for the person who's needing to be able to be supported. And it's just really important. So like I said, that gratitude statement is one of the things that really helped me move forward. Obviously there was a lot of other things that helped as well, but my gratitude statements were the things that helped me to be able to get things started, being able to get things moving. So I want to I want to thank you very much, Brittany, for being able to share your story. And one of the things that I would like to be able to do is invite you to be able to come back and talk about something else, or talk about something else in terms of mental health that you've had struggles with. And so I would love to be able to have you back on again if you are interested in coming back on. And I'm not going to put you on the spot to say yes, definitely, or no, no, I don't want to. So I won't put you on the spot online, but I just wanted to put that out there to you. And definitely, because we need to hear more of those stories. We need to hear more of the real stories. Like I said at the beginning, is that when we hear people that are struggling with mental health, and that they're all these famous people and they've committed suicide and everybody's talking about it and all this stuff around, well, it's important for us to be able to talk about it, but nobody talks about it to the people who are in front of us. It's always about the famous people, but what about the people that are right there, right here in our present time? So yeah. So but I want to be able to thank you very much for being able to do this. And I want to thank everybody for joining. And if you have any questions or comments, please, let's start the discussion. Let's get things going. And thank you, Nikki, for being able to get the conversations going. Brittany's tagged in this post as well. So like if ever that you have some comments or some questions that you want to be able to ask Brittany specifically, then feel free to put them in there and she can definitely come back and swing around and give us that feedback. So,
yeah, I love that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.